The Gifted series premiere exposed. Right off the top, I do have to wonder how many like X episode titles are gonna have like extreme prejudice and all that stuff. But going into this, I was like, all right. Past 4 days, going from Friday to Monday at least, we had two Marvel shows premiere. We had The Inhumans on Friday with the 2 hour premiere, and then we had this episode today, or I guess technically it was yesterday because I work nights, so I didn't get to see it until super late. But we had the 1 hour premiere for The Gifted, and going through, I was like, okay, I like The Inhumans. If you guys want to check out my review, I'll put the little end screen at the end of this review for that. And I was like, that I thought was cool. You know, a lot of people didn't like it, and it had a ton of bad press going into it because of the IMAX stuff. And I was like, okay. The Gifted, we didn't hear anything about. They didn't do the whole big IMAX deal or anything like that. And I was like, okay, I'm very curious how this is going to play out because, of course, it's the whole cinematic universe versus the Fox universe, and this is like strictly X-Men. It's just like with Legion, which I'm just going to say this now. If you have not seen Legion yet on FX, you are seriously missing out. Like, if you enjoyed this, Legion is just like, it's trippy. Like, it is so trippy and like just off the wall. It's such a great show. It's amazing. On FX, it was only like an 8 episode first season, and then it's like an insane cliffhanger. So definitely watch Legion because it's awesome. And it's like this, except set in like the 70s or 80s, I believe. So definitely watch that if you haven't seen it. But going into this, I was like, all right, so Fox being the owners of, you know, like the whole X-Men movie franchise and as well as the TV stuff, I was like, how is this going to play out? You know, it's going into it. Fox does different types of shows, you know, different channels do the different things. And I was like, how is this going to play out? Because I was so worried, honestly, that it was going to be like too much drama. And that's what I was mostly worried about. I was like, I really hope that this isn't like over the top drama. And I was like, I know it's going to have that tension of them being mutants and stuff like that. And I was like, but is it going to like, is that going to be like the side story, or is that really going to be the heart and soul of this series? And fortunately, it was. I mean, it started, like, I swear to God, every commercial break in this episode was, like, great. Like, something good happened at the end. It was perfect pacing for the whole episode. The start is kind of dark. You know, we start off with Blink. It was super awesome. I'm glad that she's in this show because that's freaking cool. Also, Polaris, I had no idea that that's who that was. I didn't really know any of the characters outside of Blink. I didn't really look into like what characters were going to show up here and there. I was like, I'll just wait and see what happens. So I was insanely surprised. For anyone who doesn't know who Polaris is, technically speaking, we'll see what they do with that. But technically, she is Magneto's daughter. So I don't know what that, you know, I don't know what that means. But I was like, that says something to me. So Polaris is in there, and that blew my freaking mind when I first saw that. So it starts off with the two of them, as well as two other dudes, Marcos and Thunderbird. So Blink is on the run from the cops. They do a great way of like showing off her abilities when she teleports, and then the portal is like closing up as the cop car drives into it, and it like clips the last of the lights on the top. I was like, that was a really great way to kind of show that. So she teleports, and then we have Polaris, Marcos, and then I literally just said his name. Warbird, Thunderbird, I already forgot. I'm like super excited, so I'm like having a weird time with the names because I suck at names in general. But they're tracking Blink down, and ultimately they end up finding her. Naturally, the cops show up, and things get really disastrous, and Polaris actually ends up being captured. And they did a really cool thing with the way that it all played out, because before she was captured, we see Marcos actually get shot. Like, they show his powers in a lot of different ways in this episode, because I don't really know his character. At first I was like, okay, so he has light, and he can like really expand it into like a blinding light. And I was like, okay, that can definitely have some effects on people. You can literally do that to the point where it makes someone blind. And then he gets shot, and his body, like the inside of his body, literally glows. And I was like, that's very cool. So that made me interested in his powers. And then they show him doing like laser cutting on a cinder block at one point, where he's, you know, trying to come up with a plan to save his girlfriend. And then we see him do that, you know, quite a bit towards the end. For like the little bit where he was with the dad, he like grabbed his hand, and he was basically, it was like a mini blowtorch a little bit. And I was like, this is actually very cool. So it was very interesting, you know, seeing the different ways that he can actually utilize his power. So I thought that was really awesome. But the opening was really good, and you know, once he gets hit, Polaris freaks out, and she's slamming the cop up against the dumpster, and then she gets hit with the taser, and she's able to basically send a charge back to the cop. And I was like, this is just super cool. But of course she gets taken out, and then, you know, Blink is taken with Marcos and Warbird. And I was like, that was a dark opening. And then it just cuts, and it's like, that was the opening to the series. And I was like, that was really cool. It didn't go as planned, where it was like, you know, we find her, take her to the mutant underground, everything's good. It was like, we found her, and then we lost someone else. Of course, that someone else ends up kind of blending into naturally the main storyline of the Strucker family, and that was very well done too. And I love the way they did it. Like, I think that was the second break when the son, once again, I really suck with names, so I'm just gonna call them the Strucker twins because that's what they're called in the comics, or the siblings at least. And man, the scene they had where the bullies were messing with him, like I'd seen it, it was a part in the trailer, so I knew that that was coming, where it's like that happened because of the stress he felt. But the way it played out as like the full sequence, I was like, this is incredibly well done. And it was really dark because it's like, you know, granted it's hot water, but that hot water effing burns. And he's being tortured by these bullies who are just beating him up, you know, because they're douchebag bullies. And they're messing with him and they just push him over the edge and his powers officially start to activate. And you know, everything's shaking. I couldn't even tell what his power really was at first. I'm like, I can't tell if this is magnetic or if this is just force field based, and it seems to just be force field based, which is kind of similar to his sister's ability, where she can kind of basically solidify the elements, because she mentioned she can do it with water and other stuff. So very excited to see that. I don't know if they have any plans, but I instantly thought that's cool. She can like solidify water, not exactly ice, but you know, maybe glass. We don't really get to see exactly how physical it is, but she did block bullets, so it's like clearly it's very tough. So I would love to see that if they did it like really cool with like some fire, and she like made like solid fire or something. That just like a bunch of ideas came to mind. So can't wait to see how they utilize that in the future. But you know, he loses control of his abilities, and it's the first time he ever actually activates his powers, and it was such a great moment. Everything just goes nuts, and I was so curious because I had no idea. Honestly, going into it, I assumed that the whole family were mutants. Like, that's what I thought from the very first trailer. I thought it was like, okay, so he, you know, he lost control because he was being, you know, attacked. And that's when the family basically had to take off. I just assumed, you know, both the parents are mutants, and once it was kind of revealed that the son was a mutant, it was because of this freak accident, and that's why they left, but they all knew that they were mutants. And it was very different. It's not what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be like, okay, so, you know, he ends up losing control of his power, and then we see that his sister does have a power, and so she goes in, she helps him, and they both end up escaping, and then they go to their mother. And I was like, okay, well now she's going to be like, I'm sorry I had to be this way, poof, I have a power too. And it turns out that's not the case. The dad didn't have any powers. It was just like, nope, the X gene is in their family, but neither of the parents actually had mutant powers. And I thought that was such a cool concept, because we've seen that before actually, like in the it was in X-Men 2, they did that with Iceman. Like he had a brother who didn't have powers, and neither of his parents had powers either. So it was, you know, it caught them off guard. But like I said, just going into this show, because I didn't really research it, I just assumed from that first trailer the whole family had powers, or at least one of the parents did. But then it was like, okay, so he has powers. The sister definitely has powers. She reveals that, you know, she's had them for quite a few years. And then it's like, and that's it. That's the cutoff point. The parents have no idea what to do. There's like, they can't, you know, help them with their powers because neither of them actually have powers. And I just thought that was so cool. I was like, I like that idea as one of the main concepts of the actual series, because it was actually a great part in X-Men 2. It was one of my favorite parts, them dealing with that emotional struggle of having, you know, a family where, you know, 3/4 of, you know, of this family with Iceman's, you know, mom, dad, and brother, none of them had powers, but he did, and he felt like a, you know, an outcast. And then his brother was like jealous of him for having powers, and then he called the police like, hey, my brother's here with other mutants and stuff. And I always loved that scene because it dives into some stuff that you don't get from the rest of the film, where it's just like these guys hate mutants and then it's just battle stuff. This was like all talk, and it was really well done. So I love the fact that that's a part of this series, and I can't wait to see how that kind of affects the rest of the show. And of course, we go through, we have our great action sequences, and it was all just really well done. We got some cool references. They did the 90s X-Men thing, so that was great. Stan Lee made a cameo, super awesome. I wasn't expecting that, but he made a cameo here. He did not in Inhumans. I don't know what that means, but maybe that just means one was better than the other in his mind as well. But that was super awesome, and just them going into the, you know, final sequence where it's supposed to be this man is able to make a deal, get his family out, he helps Marco get Polaris back, you know, we find out that she's pregnant, which I knew that was going to be the case. As soon as he showed her this random paper, I was like, the only thing that could be is that she's pregnant, because it would either be that, or they'd whip out like a mega reference from the first episode and be like, we know where your father is, something crazy like that, who's, like I said, Magneto. Or, you know, they could have referenced Scarlet Witch or Quicksilver, obviously her siblings. So, you know, none of that happened, so I was like, it's definitely going to be that she's pregnant. So I can't wait to see how that plays out. I would imagine that she's going to live. That would be an interesting concept going into depending on how they do, time skips and stuff like that, I would say probably going into season 2, they could just be like, all right, we skipped a couple of months, and then maybe by the end of the season, they keep skipping a little bit of time here and there. By the end of season 2, which I think this show could easily get a season 2 because it was so good this first episode. Then they could go along with like, there's a new mutant baby. So I think that's a cool idea, but. They talk about the X-Men, they talk about the Brotherhood, and it's like everyone's just gone. They don't really understand exactly what's going on. X-Men have disappeared, the Brotherhood is gone, so the figureheads within the mutant community, of course, the good guys being the X-Men, and the bad guys being the Brotherhood, everyone's gone. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what references they're going to be pulling from the comics. Excuse me. Obviously, there's no Asteroid M. There's no stuff like that. So it's hard to say exactly what's happening. They didn't reference a comet in space. They didn't reference a mutant island anywhere else. They don't reference anything like a No More Mutants event, which is a big deal from the comics, where Scarlet Witch, Polaris' sister, says that she doesn't want there to be any more mutants, and that just like that effed a bunch of stuff up in the comic books. So they didn't really reference any of those big moments. It's just like they're gone. We don't know what happened. Maybe there will be some answers to that like way in the future. Who knows what they're doing with it? But I am very curious. It just makes me wonder, with everything we've had from like the insanely convoluted X-Men movie timeline, it just makes me wonder, like, where does this fit? Because I was kind of waiting. I was just waiting for them to say something very specific, like, okay, this matches up with these movies or these movies. But at this point, it's kind of just like it's in the X-Men universe, and that's pretty much it. So it's just like the modern, the most modern version. So maybe at some point we'll get some references to exactly what happened. Maybe we'll never get that reference because they don't want to kind of break any sort of molding with whatever they have planned for the movies, even though they're doing like the 90s for the next movie, since we've gotten not Days of Future Past, Apocalypse. So they're in the past anyway, so they can kind of do whatever they want for modern day stuff. But maybe they already have plans for future X-Men movies. I don't know, but it's just a lot of things I was looking for. I was like, all right, so where does this take place? What kind of movie timeline should we actually be considering this placed in between or before or after? So either way, I'm looking forward to what they're doing, because the story, contained, regardless of what random, X-Men Fox movie timeline it's in, is really well done. This is definitely a great first hour for the show, and I'm super excited to see what they do in the future. We got a great display, like I said, at the end. The Sentinel services come after them, and they have like they have like drones early on in the episode to find them, and then they have these like mini spider sentinels, which looked super creepy, but it was very well done. Like when they actually latch onto you, they like squeeze onto your leg and stuff, and then when they get damaged, they just pop the leg off and they keep on rolling. And I was like, this is cool. This is a very interesting way to change up the idea of the Sentinels. And that was another thing that made me wonder about the timeline, because it's like, all right, well, we have like 100 million different versions of this is where the Sentinels were, this is where they are, if you do like, Days of Future Past and all this stuff. So it's some weird timeline thing that happened. They stopped the Sentinels from being made at some point, but eventually, of course, there have to be Sentinels. It's the X-Men universe. It's the Marvel universe. They have to exist. So these weird these rolling spider sentinel drones, definitely cool. I'm sure we'll get to see more in the future. They'll probably kind of stick with this for a while now, but that was just really cool. And of course, we get that display, of course, at the end from the younger of the Strucker kids. And he gains a little bit of control of his power, and he just rips all the things apart. And I was like, yeah, that was definitely cool. Everyone makes it through Blink's portal, of course, except for the dad. And I was like, I thought he was going to die. If I'm being totally honest, I was like, they're just going to straight up kill him in his first episode. Because it was supposed to be like his family gets away, and then he stays behind to help free Polaris. And I was like, okay, maybe that's what they'll do for like a little bit. They'll get away for a minute, and then he'll, something bad will happen. Then they come back to the States to try to rescue him later. But it was like, nope. They just get split up. They go to the mutant underground. He ends up being captured. So now he and Polaris kind of have to, find some sort of way to work together to break out of prison. And they reference the fact that there are mutants hunting mutants. I was very curious about that. The guy that kind of led the Sentinel services in this episode, I have to assume they were talking about him when they made that reference, because they show his face and it's like, there's mutants hunting mutants for the Sentinel services. So, of course, like, it's his kid, and he had a mutant child, and something happened there. Maybe they're alive, maybe they're not, but he was kind of more on the side of the Sentinel services, or maybe he was forced to be in that way because it was just like, wow, maybe they killed his kid, and it was just like, well, that broke me, so I have to find some way to kind of fix it, and I'll try to do it as a part of the Sentinel services so it never happens again. Or he's just one of those people, because that's always a thing with superheroes or it could be like any supernatural thing ever. There's always that supernatural thing hunting other supernatural things. It's like, why are you an enemy to us? That is literally in every superhuman or supernatural thing ever made in any story. It's always that way, and it's always been a part of X-Men, with mutants hunting mutants while working with other humans, not just like X-Men versus Brotherhood. But very excited. Like I said, I thought it was a great first episode. I cannot wait to see what they do with the rest of this season. It looks pretty cool. Seeing more powers, seeing more characters. I don't know, exactly what we should expect as far as like references, like, oh, here's this person for like half a second or anything. They'll probably stick with the characters that they have. They might, I would assume they're going to make references to other characters, and maybe we will get like appearances from lesser known characters. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they did some Morlock stuff. I would love to see Meryl. I think they could do some cool stuff with that. I know some people don't really like her because it's like, for people who don't know her character, basically she can create bones. Like, she's the character that's referenced in like the Deadpool movies, who has like spikes in her back. That's Meryl, but there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with that, with characters being able to like create bones that shoot out of their bodies. I've seen some stuff because I'm an anime nerd. There's like one character that comes to mind, so I'm like, they can do some sweet stuff with that if they want to. But Morlock seems really easy, and it's like, that's such a quick reference that they could do. They're mutants that are basically so mutated they can't possibly just look human. They live, in the sewers. So I think we could get them for sure. Maybe not soon. Just as like a cool reference down the line. Maybe not even this season. It'll just stick to saying, speaking references out loud, or maybe showing little stuff in the background. But either way, I think this show is off to a fantastic start. I'm very excited to watch it. Like I said, it's hard not to constantly think of the Inhumans, because I was like, that had 2 hours, and I was like, I didn't hate it. A lot of people hated that, and I was like, I thought it was okay. There's some things that I liked, and there was little stuff. The hair, that's bad across the board. But this was just like one solid hour, and it was great the whole way through, and it wasn't confusing like Legion. Seriously, you should watch it. But that first episode, I couldn't tell what was happening. It's trippy. That first episode, you will almost be confused, because I was like, I can't tell what's real, and that's almost the appeal of that show. You don't know what's truly happening sometimes in that first episode, specifically the first episode. After that, it kind of gets easier, but that first episode of Legion, if you haven't seen it, it gets real confusing. It's just like, I think this is real, but I don't know if it's real. But they do such a great job with that, and I don't know if they'll ever blend these two shows together. But I think that would be cool. I don't know if that would exactly work, because they would have to, like I said, Legion takes place in like the 70s, 60s or 70s, so it'd be kind of hard to pull that one off, I think. But it would be cool if they found some way to randomly do that, age the characters up, and then toss them in the Gifted for a little minute. But great first episode, of course. Would love to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. With this being clearly within the X-Men universe, and there are no X-Men currently. They even say the X-Men, have disappeared. The Brotherhood is gone. I would love to know what references you guys want to see in the future. They already did 2 epic ones. Of course, the Stan Lee cameo, like I said. Even as much as I love the Stan Lee cameo, because I was surprised, because it was a TV show, I didn't expect him to like actually show up, because there are references to him in like the Netflix shows as well, but it would be like pictures and stuff in the background. So it like blew my mind when he was actually in the episode. It just caught me off guard. But I still gotta say, like, them doing the 90s X-Men theme as the ringtone, I was just like, that's cool. I love that show. I have I have every season on DVD, so it was like, that was awesome. I think everyone across the board is like, that's just a cool reference. But I would love to know what references you guys would like to see, what characters you guys would like to see. I would go with just minor characters to be realistic, because I don't think we should ever expect, like, I don't know if Hugh Jackman is going to change his mind in the future. Like, 3 years down the line, it's like, boom, season 4 of The Gifted. There's Wolverine. I highly doubt that'll ever happen, but it would be cool if they did that in the future. I just kind of doubt it. But I would love to know what references you guys are hoping to see, or just characters in general. If there are any storylines you guys want to see them kind of incorporate, because I would love to see them incorporate some stuff like, I want to say the island is Sanctuary. I can never remember the name of the island, but Asteroid M, or the Mutant Island, I would love to see them incorporate some of those ideas and be like, we tried this before and it failed and stuff like that. I think that would just like add to the world of the actual series, because those are some ridiculously huge moments within the comic books, And I think that would actually add to it. Even if we don't actually get to see it, it would be like, we already went through that crap and it was supposed to be perfect, and then it completely fell apart, and now we're dealing with, Sentinel services and still being the Mutant Underground. So there are, of course, a million different things that they could just say, this giant event happened and this is where we are now. I would love that. Just as a comic fan, it would be like, oh, I can think of this and think of that because I've seen those done over in the cartoons or through the comics. So I would love a lot of huge events to have already taken place just because I could kind of form my own little story there. But I would love to know what references you guys would like, what characters you guys would like to see, and of course, what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.